Ken Hudnall, this is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas, gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, it is May 26th, Memorial Day. And 146th day of the year, 219 days remain to the year's over with. Holidays and observances: National Paper Airplane Day, Cheese Rolling Gloucester, World Dracula Day, National Blueberry Cheesecake Day, World Redhead Day, World Lindy Hop Day, that's a dance I haven't seen in a while, National Sorry Day, Sally Ride Day, First Female Astronaut, Decoration Day, Memorial Day, as I said earlier, Spring Bank Holiday, Vivid Sydney, Tracky Dack Day, National Children's Gardening Week, and Garden Wildlife Week. Famous birthdays: Stevie Nicks, the Duck himself, John Wayne, Lenny Kravitz, Lauryn Hill, and Miles Davis. All right, we've been talking about a lot of strange topics. And today we're going to talk about unexplained and unsolved disappearances. And the first one comes from Christmas Eve, 1945, Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sodder home. George and Jenny Sodder. Stockings were hung by the chimney with care. There were 10 children in the family. Presents underneath the tree. Right after midnight, a fire broke out. George and Jenny Sodder escaped with 4 of their 10 children. 5 others, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, vanished in the fire. By morning, nothing was left of the house but ash. Investigators came in and searched and didn't find anything. No bones, no remains, no trace of 5 missing children. The official explanation, of course, was that the fire cremated the bodies completely. But the Sodders didn't believe that, and neither did a lot of other folks. The fire hadn't burned that long, and the heat wasn't enough to completely destroy bodies. The appliances were still recognizable. Why was there nothing left of the children? Well, of course, rumors ignited. Strange phone call hours before the bodies. A ladder taken from its normal place and put up against the side of the house. Delivery man saw the unfamiliar figures loitering near the house. Now, in and of itself, these details mean a whole lot, but taken together, had a pattern. Now, Sodders, of course, were utterly baffled. What happened to the children who vanished? Well, the fire that consumed the house brought with it a certain certainty, I guess is the way to say it. It was an unbearable loss, but a clear loss. Smoke, ashes, and missing children. In the charred remains of the house, searchers expected to find bones or buttons or fragments or something. But they didn't find anything, not a trace of the 5 children who'd gone to bed and vanished. Now, authorities, of course, will quickly explain it all away. Blaze and burned too hot. Children's remains were reduced to nothing but ash. But those in the fire, including the local crematorium workers, insisted it was impossible. Human bones don't vanish that easily. And the blaze lasted only 45 minutes, not nearly long enough to consume one human body, much less 5. And then there were other oddities. The missing ladder, for one, found in a nearby ditch. Phone line had been cut. There was a witness that claimed to see the children peering from a passing car. Stories came out about strangers asking about the Sauter family leading up to Christmas. A lot of theories made the way around. Kidnapping, vendetta, cover-up. Fire may have destroyed the house, but it certainly ignited something else. A lot of suspicion. George and Jenny couldn't even grieve properly. No grave to visit, no final goodbye. Instead, they began to search. They wanted to know what happened. And then letters showed up. Photos from the shadows. In the years that passed, the Sauter family never stopped looking for the missing 5. Grief transformed itself into an obsession. They combed the newspapers looking for unfamiliar faces, studied crowds for glimpses of a child. The world told them to move on, but they refused. They couldn't. And then came the letters. Anonymous letters, cryptic, unsigned. Some claimed knowledge of the children's whereabouts. Others offered fragments of detail, names, places. Most led to nothing. But there was one. 1967, more than 2 decades after the fire. Sauter's got an envelope postmarked from Kentucky. Inside it was a photograph of a young man, dark eyes, high cheekbones, and a faint resemblance to Lewis, the 4th Sauter child. He'd been 9 when he vanished. Scrawled on the back, it said, Lewis Sauter, I love Brother Frankie. And it had a number, A90132. Well, the Sauters hired a private investigator who took the photo and disappeared himself. He was never seen or heard from again. To outsiders, it all seemed too strange to be real. But to George and Jenny, these were signs that their children hadn't died. They'd been taken, hidden, maybe even raised under new names. Who sent the photo? Why wait so long? Well, the deeper the Sauters looked, the more one question grew in the background like a shadow. Was it revenge? Did the children survive? In the years before the fire, George Sauter had made some enemies. He was a proud Italian immigrant, a vocal critic of Mussolini. Alienated members of the local Italian community remained loyal to the regime. A lot of tension simmered beneath the surface. Sharp words exchanged, strange men seen on the property. Subtle threats dismissed as coincidence. Then came the fire. Was it just a tragic accident, or was it something else? Could someone have sought revenge, not by attacking George directly, but by tearing apart his family? And if that was the case, did they take the children before the fire, hide them someplace, raise them in silence? You'd think that idea was unthinkable, but to many, more believable than the official explanation. Well, the Sauters built a billboard across the road bearing the faces of their missing children. It stayed up for decades, weathered by time but untouched by doubt. And the Sauters followed every lead, clung to every whisper, refused to let the memory fade. They believed the children hadn't died. They'd been taken. Well, to this day, that case still remains open. Not just in files or faded headlines, but in the minds of those who can't forget. It's a mystery that lingers. But not all vanishings occur in the dead of the night or in the glow of a fire. Some happen in broad daylight. Places filled with people and laughter and light, like a college bar, where one young man walked in and never walked out. Let's talk about Brian Schaefer. Now, his last night began like so many ordinary nights. Low hum of conversation in the college bar. People came and went, drinks were poured, stories exchanged, but somewhere in all that noise, something strange occurred. A presence slipped away unnoticed, a man who walked in, but never seen walking out. Now, initially, nobody panicked. People lose track of each other in crowds. Phones die, run out of energy. Messages go unread, but hours turned into days, and what seemed impossible became undeniable. He had vanished. No evidence of a struggle, no farewell, just gone. And the strangest deepened over time. Surveillance footage that showed him entering the bar never showed him leaving. The bar only had one exit, an unanswered phone that continued to ring, and a single chilling fragment of a message. Possibly a call for help. Maybe nothing at all. Disappearance in the middle of a city isn't supposed to happen, not in the age of digital footprints and constant connectivity, but this one did, and it's remained ever since. So how does somebody vanish when the whole world's watching? This happened in 2006, beginning of spring break. A time of release and celebration when Brian Schaefer, 27-year-old medical student, walked into the ugly Tuna Saloon, popular bar near the Ohio State University campus. He was a smart, charismatic, well-liked young man, planned a vacation with a woman he hoped to marry. Life seemed full of promise. By the next morning, he had disappeared completely. Well, the surveillance footage showed him laughing with friends, moving about the bar and through the crowd, stepped outside for a moment, and then disappeared. No footage showed him leaving the bar. Nobody saw him walk away. The building only had one exit, watched by cameras. Never appeared on him again. Looked like he'd been erased. Now, there was no history of mental illness, no reason to run. His wallet, keys, and car were untouched. He made plans for the future. Police searched every room, every stairwell, every rooftop, every back alley. Nothing. Friends were questioned. Rumors surfaced. How does a man disappear from a place filled with people? How can there be no trace, no sound, no clue, especially in this day and time? What does it mean when the last known image of somebody so ordinary, but it leads to nothing? Maybe the answer doesn't lie in what was seen that night, but what was missed. Because this was more than a night out. It became a riddle locked inside four walls, a bar, a camera, and an exit. Well, the ugly Tuna Saloon wasn't hidden or remote. It sat on a well-lit street in the heart of Columbus, Ohio. The kind of place where music spills over the sidewalk and students gather in waves and trade stories over drinks. And inside was Brian Schaefer, laughing with his friends, raising a glass. Stepped out of view just for a moment, and in that moment, went away. Surveillance cameras covered every entrance and exit. Footage captured Brian arriving, walking in, talking to two women just outside the front door, and then disappeared. He never walked back out. He wasn't seen leaving through any hallway, emergency exit, or service entrance. He simply vanished. Well, police combed the building. The air vents were too small. The doors were watched. Security footage was analyzed again and again and again. Even considered whether he might have disguised himself, changed clothes, hidden in plain sight. But there was no theory to explain how a man could walk into a bar and never be seen again. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no abandoned items. His phone rang for days before going silent. He had plans, a future, and no reason to disappear. But there was not a single trace, not in the bar, not on the street, or anywhere in the city that gave any idea what happened to him. Well, cities aren't designed for secrets. They're alive with movement, light, noise, cameras on almost every corner, eyes in the windows, crowds that never sleep. In theory, it should be impossible to vanish in a place where everybody's watching. But Brian Schaefer's case suggests something else. Even in the heart of a city, a person can silently simply slip between the cracks and disappear. Well, Columbus, Ohio is not a labyrinth. The bar wasn't a maze, but somehow his presence evaporated like breath on a glass. Left behind no scene, no struggle, no message, no nothing. Could he have left of his own free will, walked away to a new life? But how could he do that without being seen? Could something have happened to him in the bar, shielded by the very familiarity of the place? Or did he step outside into the city and be taken by somebody? It's one thing to get lost in the wilderness, or the ocean. It's another to vanish among blinking signs and passing traffic and with 1,000 strangers scrolling through their phones. But that's exactly what happened. Nobody saw him leave. Nobody heard him scream. Where is he? Well, as time stretched on, every plausible scenario dissolved into uncertainty. One idea refused to die. That he hadn't vanished into thin air. He'd been taken. Not by accident, not by choice, but by someone else. Somebody who knew how to close a door and leave no mark. Somebody who watched him, waited, and took him in silence. Well, that theory might seem far-fetched at first. After all, who could pull something like that off in a bar full of people, beneath the gaze of security cameras with police searching every inch of the premises? But then again, you have to ask, how could somebody disappear without doing exactly that? Well, some believe he was lured out. Others suspect he may have been targeted for reasons unknown, caught in a trap to close without a sound. His body was never found. His phone was never recovered. The absence of evidence became its own kind of message. And in that vacuum, speculation filled every corner. Secret relationships, criminal involvement, even human trafficking were examined. And to this day, nobody's come forward. Nobody's confessed. Not a single solid lead has emerged. And if Brian didn't leave of his own free will, and he didn't die inside the bar, there's only one explanation left. Somebody took him, and somebody still knows where he's at. But cities aren't the only place where the sea swallows truth. Sometimes mystery awaits in the open water, the blue skies, calm currents, where the last message is full of reassurance and hope. People vanished without a trace. I'm talking about the Mary Celeste of the 21st century. Now, the ocean, of course, is vast and ancient. It's got more secrets than it reveals. And it cradles silence as easily as it does storms, and swallows stories whole. There's something simply unsettling about a message of reassurance sent from the open sea. A final contact that assures listeners everything is fine. 3 men set on what should have been a routine sailing trip. Calm waters, good weather, experienced hands. They laughed and they fished. They sent out dates with loved ones. Nothing was out of place. Everything was fine. Man's transmission was simple, confident, the kind of message that settles any worry they might be back on land, but what happened next was anything but calm. The yacht was discovered adrift. It was as though time had paused. Sails fluttered. The engine still ran. Meals were laid out, cups half full, electronics cut on, working fine. No distress call, no SOS, no sign of a struggle. The boat floated, untouched, but the crew had disappeared. So where'd they go? Why did they leave without a word? How could 3 men disappear so completely from a boat that everything was remained intact? This was off the coast of Australia, 2007. Call came in calm waters. Passing helicopter spotted a drifting catamaran off the northeastern coast of Australia, its sails flapping in the wind. Its course uncertain. From above, nothing looked unusual until a closer inspection revealed the truth. Nobody was on board. No captain at the helm, no sign of distress. The boat, the Cause 2, seemed to have been left behind. And inside the boat, everything was untouched. Laptop, leaked, food sat nearby, neatly arranged on a table. There was even a cup of coffee, cooling slowly in the sun. No overturned chairs, no broken glass, no blood, no nothing. 3-man crew, experienced, familiar with the sea, and in good spirits, had vanished without sending a single distress signal. So what could make 3 grown men abandon a seaworthy vessel in good weather without a warning or any trace of anything? On this particular day, the ocean, which could be moody, was calm and still. The investigator had left with a mystery that felt older than the boat itself. And very similar to the case of Mary Celeste, found adrift in the Atlantic 100 years before, in nearly identical circumstances. But this wasn't the 1800s. This was the age of GPS and radio and satellite phones and modern safety equipment. But the result was the same. A boat empty of life. So where'd they go? What did they see? What could have caused them to disappear so completely, so quietly, without even knocking over a glass? Maybe the answer wasn't in what was missing, but what was left behind. An abandoned boat with running engines and a set table. The rescuers boarded the Cas-2. It felt less like stepping onto a missing person scene and more like entering a dream frozen in time. The engines were still humming along. The GPS was active. Meals were half prepared, untouched, as if somebody had stepped away just for a minute. No chaos, no overturned chairs, no broken equipment. Less like an emergency, more like an interrupted lunch. One of the crew's shirts was folded over the rail. A fishing line dragged behind the vessel. A cup of tea sat beside an open book. Every detail suggested peace and routine and normalcy. But the boat had drifted for miles with no hand at the wheel, no guiding presence. The ocean had carried it in silence, just as it had seemingly taken the men on board without a sound. So how did three people vanish without interrupting a single object? Why didn't somebody radio for help? Why leave behind a perfectly functioning boat in perfect weather? Well, theories range from freak accidents to sudden illness to unseen threats, but none quite fit the situation. Because whatever happened on the boat didn't leave a single visible scar. Not a drop of blood, no clues, no struggle, no trace. The ocean, of course, is vast and unpredictable, but it rarely leaves a mystery so clean. No signs of panic, no indication something gone wrong. Life jackets remained untouched. The emergency beacon sat idle, as if three men on board the Cas-2 had simply stepped off the deck and vanished into thin air. Authorities searched the surrounding waters, scoured the coastline, traced the yachts drifting past, but found nothing. No bodies, no debris, no answers, not even a ripple. Just an empty vessel. What makes the mystery so chilling is not the violence, but the lack of it. Total absence of fear etched into the scene. It was a kind of calm that didn't belong. Silence too perfect, too deliberate as the ocean itself was hiding a secret. Sailors talk about rogue waves, sudden squalls, equipment failure, and none of that matched what they found. No broken rails, no wet decks, no torn sails, just a floating paradox. So was this something rare and tragic? Looking at the shadow of a modern maritime curse? Sailors have long whispered about cursed ships and phantom vessels and sea spirits that claim men without warning. These stories once belonged in the past, the centuries when maps edited monsters and the edge of the unknown world shimmered with danger. But the Cas-2 wasn't a wooden schooner, and the crew was no superstitious voyagers. This was 2007, an era of satellites and sonar and instant communication. Sea gave back the boat, but not the people. Families are left with paperwork and official statements and the kind of questions that played on a loop endlessly in the mind. The yacht floated on, unchanged in the area. Simply, even in the modern world, the ocean still holds the power to erase. Where theories, of course, came and went. Some tried to be rational, others reached toward the supernatural, but none could explain the stillness, the neatness, the quiet departure of 3 miles from one moment to the next. As if the sea had written its own version of truth, one that had no witnesses. Maybe it wasn't just a fluke or an accident. Maybe it was something older, a pattern, a recurrence, a maritime echo that keeps returning in new forms. We had the Mary Celeste and the Cas-2. Well, frankly, some disappearances are meant to remain mysteries. There's something about a disappearance that lingers. Vanishing leaves no moment of farewell, no point of closure, no body to mourn. It opens a door and leaves it wide open. We come through with questions and theories and fears, and on the other side, we find no answers. vanishings seem almost designed to defy explanation, leave just enough behind to suggest meaning, a shoe, a message, a silent video, but never enough to solve the puzzle. These stories stretch across decades and continents, and they speak the same quiet language. Something happened. Nobody knows what. And that's why we come back to them again and again. We search archives and decode photos and follow timelines. Not because we think we'll find the truth, but because we need the search itself. Disappearances test our belief in cause and effect, in safety and structure. The idea that the world can be understood. Somebody vanished without a trace. It damages our illusion of control. Yet maybe, just maybe, the purpose lies in the space they leave behind, the silence that demands attention, a hole in the story that refuses to close. Every question needs an answer. Some need to remain open. Well, there are many ideas that pop up when something like this happens. Quite often the completely baffling disappearances are found in relation to, for lack of a better term, UFO scenarios. Now, as I wrote a book, I said, encounters of the first kind involve observations. And one place to see UFOs, of course, is out over the water, in the ocean. Close encounters of the second kind, UFO causes a car engine to stop or initiates a power outage or some damage, such as crop circles. Encounters of the third kind, alien is you meet the alien. Sometimes it's conversation or maybe a telepathic communication. And encounters of the fourth kind are the ones I refer to as wow. And quite often that involves sexual interaction. Now, also involved in close encounters of the fourth kind are abductions. This type of abduction invariably involves being taken inside the UFO, might involve a medical examination. Abductees also report what are referred to as intimate probings. Well, in discussing all this, there are a number of other related topics. For example, unexplained animal deaths. Or even more alarming, instances where an animal or even a human is found mutilated. Ever since the advent of modern UFO events, mutilation of animals and humans is something of a taboo topic. But it's a topic that just won't fade away. Now, much like UFOs, animal mutilations and the reason for these occurrences evade any kind of rational explanation. If an extraterrestrial or an alien is behind these atrocities, what's the purpose? Well, in regard to this phenomena, you might ask why. And then, of course, there are a number of theories that have been advanced to explain these mutilations. Might also ask, is there a rise in animal mutilations in relation to sightings of UFOs? Now, if extraterrestrial beings are behind abductions and mutilations, then again, we come back to the question of why. If you've got the technology to fly halfway across the universe, why take animal and human tissue samples? Well, one of the hypothesis. Aliens are intent on populating this planet. There's just one problem they run into. It's called the human race. Almost 8 billion of us. They may be in the process of assessing the best way of reducing the human population. I'd argue it'd be easy to herd as many humans as possible into the northern latitudes, and that seems to be happening with the influx at our borders. The downside of destroying the human race is fallout and poisoning of the planet's ecosphere. Maybe they're working on a human-specific virus or bacteria that'll take us out. The Zika virus is one. They cause humans to be born brainless, even though most will immediately get elected to Congress. They've almost achieved their goals. Trouble is, we share biological, biochemical, and metabolic pathways with just about every life form on the planet. If we look at the human genome, it's 99% the same as you find in primates. So maybe they're working on a way to selectively eliminate Homo sapien. They choose to take a biological warfare approach. They'll assemble something along the lines of the human immunodeficiency virus, but it can take years to kill. So what's required is something that's quick-acting and lethal. Ebola or Zika. But we do seem to have managed to dodge this particular bullet. The ideal bioweapon would be one that can spread rapidly among the population. It would be undetectable. Incubation period of 10 to 15 years. You know, there's one called CJD, originally affecting cattle. It's called the mad cow disease. That's the human equivalent. It's caused by a primitive proteinaceous entity called a prion, easily spread by consumption of contaminated beef. It's also passed on by blood transfusion. It's recently been shown to withstand sterilization protocols. So it contaminates hospitals and dental surgical equipment. And while this prion causes the neurodegenerative disease as CJD, it also causes brain diseases such as Alzheimer's and dementia. These neurodegenerative diseases come about as a result of the clumping together or polymerization of other proteins, which form plaques on the brain. So you might not kill a human population, you can certainly cripple it. And a stupid enemy is easily dispatched. Well, Charles Darwin did a great job at expounding his theory of evolution, which has never been proven, by the way. It's still a theory. But the trouble with the theory is that as yet, nobody's discovered the missing link, the way we made a giant leap from tree-climbing apes to humanoids. The stories of underground alien bases are true, then there's a possibility extraterrestrials predated us and been visiting Earth for millions of years. They may have played a hand in the creation of the human race through genetic manipulation of the lower apes. Maybe they even wiped out the dinosaurs to prepare this planet for a higher form of intelligence. Well, going back to the original topic of animal mutilation, the first case I can find a record of is April 21st, 1897. Farmer and statesman Alexander Hamilton was awoken about 10:30 that night with a loud humming noise coming from his cattle yard. Together with his son and a tenant named Gib Heslett, Hamilton ventured into the courtyard. And from his writings, he saw an airship hovering over the yard. He said it was powered by a great turbine about 30 feet in diameter, which revolved slowly underneath the craft. He said it consisted of a giant cigar-shaped portion about 300 feet long with a carriage underneath. The carriage is made of glass or some other transparent substance, alternating with a strip of some material, brilliantly lit from within, and it's occupied by 6 of the strangest creatures I ever saw. And they were jabbering together, we couldn't understand a word they said. Well, he went on to continue his description. He said it seemed to pause and hover directly over a 2-year-old heifer who was bawling and jumping, apparently caught up in the fence. And when we got to her, we found a cable about a ½ inch in thickness, made of some red material, fastening a slip knot around her neck. The other end passing up into the vessel, and she was tangled up in the wire fence. Well, we tried to get the thing off of her. Couldn't. So we cut the wire loose and watched in amazement as the ship, heifer and all, rose up into the sky and disappeared. Well, search the next day of Hamilton's farmland didn't reveal any sign of a thrill. The heifer was absolutely gone. Then news came from his neighbor, whose farm was 4 miles away. He found the hide and legs and head of the heifer in his field the next day. The rest of the animal was gone. No tracks were found in the ground immediately surrounding the heifer's remains. There seems to have been an explosion in the number of animal mutilations in the mid-1970s, I might add. Spiky mutilations mostly affected Midwestern and Western states. Excuse me. Increasing number of mutilations obviously was a cause of great concern for cattle ranchers. In fact, in 1979, FBI data showed over 5,000 mutilations in the state of Colorado alone. And there are countless accounts of cattle mutilation, or mutes as they're called. The phenomenon really took off in the late 60s. 67, one of the most famous and widely reported animal mutilations involved a horse named Snippy. And Snippy was something of a misnomer, as the horse in question was actually named Lady. She vanished. September 8th, found lying in a meadow about a ½ mile from the main house on the King Ranch. And the mutilation was certainly a gory scene. The entire neck of the horse had been denuded of flesh. Both eyeballs were taken, as well as the esophagus, tongue, and the windpipe. All the hair and the mane was taken. The head was intact, yet when a vet cut open the skull, the brain was missing. The mutilated horse was found on muddy ground. The only footprints to be found were those of the horse, which was in full gallop when it was taken. The animal said to have been running around in circles, trying to escape its attacker, and higher than normal levels of radiation detected around the body. The horse mutilation took place in Colorado's San Luis Valley, which, according to legend, is a veritable hotbed of UFO activity and animal mutilations. Alamosa County Sheriff Ben Phillips was convinced the horse had been struck by a lightning bolt. But as another author pointed out, there were no burn marks on the body. Nellie Lewis, the lady who owned Lady, pointed out that strange lights had been seen in the skies in the weeks leading up to after the mutilation. Her story of lights in the sky were backed up by a Superior Court judge named Charles Bennett. Judge Bennett and his wife had seen a triangular-shaped UFO at about the time the horse was mutilated. And Nellie was convinced that extraterrestrial beings had killed and mutilated her 3-year-old Appaloosa. She told him how the carcass smelled of a formaldehyde-like substance. And interestingly enough, no grass will grow on the spot where the body was found. She later became obsessed with UFOs and eventually, according to the records, committed suicide. 1973, a series of mutilations occurred in the U.S., involving the states of Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. Mutilations are also documented in the state of Pennsylvania. In fact, mutilations weren't restricted to cattle, sheep, goats, or so forth. Even humans were found mutilated. Now, butchered animals are sometimes found drained of blood, and vital organs have been removed with surgical precision, including the stomach and the udder and the genitals and parts of the gum tissue. There are numerous reports of excisions of the rectum. Other theories have been advanced to explain cattle mutilation. According to some conspiracy theories, government agencies tested sonic VX nerve gas on cattle. It was probably due to the fact that black helicopters have been spotted hovering near mutilated cattle. Now, these mutilated animals are not attractive, of course. The odd thing is that even predators such as coyotes and wolves tend to avoid cattle that have been mutilated. As for the cattle mutilations in modern times, they still occur sporadically in a wider geographic area. The number of these bizarre mutilations is not insignificant, by the way. Over 10,000 took place between 73 and 79. There are even accounts of mutilations witnessed by abductees. And under regression hypnosis, a lady named Myrna Hansen recalled how in May of 1980 she saw several flying saucers descend into a field of cows in Colfax County, New Mexico. Two aliens jumped out of a craft and proceeded to butcher a cow while it was still alive. She tried to intervene, which was a mistake. She was abducted and subjected to a brutal gynecological examination on board the spacecraft. She claimed to have been flown to a secret underground facility where she discovered the base housed vats containing an assortment of human body parts. Well, luckily for her, she was later released by the aliens, but this does give you an idea of what the standard mutilation kind of looks like. Leading animal mutilation expert Linda Moulton Howe has studied hundreds of animal mutilations. She's concluded, first, the types of animals most likely to be affected appear to be cattle, sheep, and horses. And that's sad, we're not able to discern what other animals have been subjected to these extraterrestrial operations in the depths of the world's unexplored jungles. Key organs and tissues removed include the tongue, the rectum, the udder, the eyeballs, a portion of the lips, parts of the jaw, and the genitals. Sometimes the heart's found removed, as well as other organs. Now, importantly, these procedures are carried out in a bloodless fashion. Cuts are smooth and look a lot more like they were done with a laser. Animals appear to have been paralyzed, but not killed while the mutilations occur. And even scavengers avoid these mutilated animals. The occupied ground, which shows no tracks or footprints, would suggest the remains are dropped back to Earth. And while there's no direct evidence UFOs are involved in the mutilations, it's been suggested that special ops helicopters have been flying over cattle ranches so as to give the impression the mutilations are not due to UFO activity. Other investigators talk about how the U.S. government experimented with a small nuclear device ignited below ground. The idea was to free up a gasification of the crude fracking process. Unfortunately, the gas that was liberated was too radioactive to be used. Now, a man named Gabe Valdez wrote a book called Dulce Base, and he maintained that government scientists had carried out samplings on cattle so as to monitor radiation levels. So we need to ask ourselves what's going on in regard to cattle mutilations. There are a number of theories. According to author Colin Keller and co-author Charlie Oliphant, the U.S. government's in cahoots with pharmaceutical companies who have gotten together to be involved in testing the health of the nation's cattle herds. Maybe these agencies are testing blood or tissue samples for prions that give rise to mad cow disease, or to give it its proper name, bovine spongiform encephalitis. It's popular theory, though, is that extraterrestrials are behind the cattle abductions. Certainly the claims made by abductee Hansen that underground alien bases are engaged in clandestine genetic experience made you think. In respect to this, Gabriel Valdez, retired New Mexico state trooper, kindly visited the scene of cow mutilations. Instead of veterinary science, a surgeon examined the cow that turned out to be pregnant. The vet cut open the uterus only to make a most horrific discovery. The fetus was a human cow, a chimera. The Dulce hybrid, the dead fetus had the body of a cow and a human head. This certainly is a shocking discovery. Unfortunately, it's not just animals that are mutilated. Humans also suffer at the hands of extraterrestrials. Back in 1956, something truly horrific occurred at a U.S. Air Force base, Holloman to be exact, in an area close to the Utah-Nevada border. March of that year, Sergeant Jonathan Lovett was abducted by an alien craft. His abduction was witnessed by Major Cunningham, who subsequently required sedation as a result of the trauma. Downwind from the missile launch site, Cunningham and Lovett were searching for rocket debris. Lovett disappeared behind a ridge, and Cunningham heard him screaming in agony. Figuring his friend had been bitten by a snake or maybe a scorpion, Cunningham was shocked to see him being dragged by his legs into a flying saucer by a long snake-like protrusion. UFO took off and hovered in a while before flying away. Search for Lovett came to an abrupt halt 10 days later when his naked body was found over 10 miles away from where he'd been abducted. And to say his body had been mutilated was an understatement. portion of his lower jaw and tongue had been cut away. His eyes were excised, and his genitals and anus had been cut away. After examining what remained of his body, a pathologist commented on the fact that surgical precision was used to remove his genitals and anus. Tissues had been removed as a plug, possibly in just one operation. The supposition being the aliens had a sampling device for such a hard procedure, maybe something akin to an apple core remover. You can only wonder what horror Lovett had to endure at the hands of the extraterrestrials, the presumption being he was dead before being mutilated. Behold. However, as I pointed out previously, our witnesses have seen cattle being butchered by aliens while the animals were still alive. Now, this whole incident, of course, was initially hushed up. Arrested for Lovett's murder, Major Cunningham was later released. Then we have what might have been a lethal alien mutilation attack on some Russian mountain climbers. The Outlaw Pass incident, which took place in February 1959 in the northern Ural Mountains, is what I'm referring to. Where precisely the incident occurred on the eastern side of Colet Sickle. Exactly what happened certainly remains a mystery, but whatever it was that attacked these 9 climbers was sinister and devastating. Mostly students comprising 8 men and 2 women, the group traveled to Torton. The initial part of their journey was by train. Then they completed the rest of their journey by truck. January 27th, one of the climbers dropped out due to a sudden illness. In the face of worsening weather conditions, remaining 9 climbers set out for the Outlaw Pass February 1st, 1959. On the 2nd, they apparently became disoriented and made the decision to pitch camp on the slope of what was known as Dead Mountain. That night, something truly sinister happened. Clues as to what happened only became evident almost 2 weeks later. Nothing was heard from the climbers by February 12th. Alarm bells began to ring and search teams were sent out. They eventually found the camp, which was a total wreck. Mysteriously, the main tent had been cut open from the inside. In what appeared to be panic, the climbers attempted to escape the tent, a lot of them running away wearing just their underwear, one sock, or maybe a single shoe. After a comprehensive search of the vicinity, all 9 climbers were eventually found. They were all dead. Some of the team suffered from cracked ribs and fractures to the skull, but an investigation revealed more sinister injuries, mutilations. One of the women, Lebanina, sustained horrific injuries. Her eyes had been removed, her tongue had been cut out, parts of her face and lip had been surgically removed. Naturally, a number of theories have been advanced to explain these mysterious deaths. Initially, it was thought they'd been killed by an avalanche. That was discounted, mainly as there's no signs of a large snowfall. As a general rule, avalanches don't usually result in the movement of eyes, lips, or tongues. Though the possibility was that maybe local tribespeople, the Mansi, had killed and mutilated the climbers, but that idea was eventually discounted. It then transpired that clothing on several of the climbers was contaminated with high levels of radiation. The other clue as to what might have happened is that the climbers all had pronounced suntans. The notion that they'd been stalked and attacked and killed, mutilated by extraterrestrials gained more credibility when another group of climbers told them what they'd seen. They'd seen bright orange lights and orbs in the vicinity that night that the incident took place. As of yet, nobody can explain how the climbers came to such a horrific end, which still remains a mystery to this day. A classic example of human mutilation occurred during the Vietnam War. And this was during a period of time that was a veritable hotbed of UFO activity. We've got what's known as referred to as the Grudge 13 affair, and relates to a down B-52 bomber. Truth is, we'll never really know the full story of this incident. The U.S. Air Force has gone to great lengths to discredit the incident. Bill English, who I got the opportunity to know, I interviewed him on my show when I was doing it out of California, was Army Special Forces unit commander tasked with finding the down bomber that had crash landed in the jungle in Laos. Now, you might assume the B-52 was shot down by Viet Cong using Russian-supplied surface-to-air missiles. But that's not what happened. The bomber had a hostile encounter with a UFO. Last radio transmission sent by the air crew said something to the effect of being attacked by UFO and disappeared as a large bright light. Rescue mission was to save and or retrieve the crew, and secondly, secure any sensitive material, and then destroy the remains of any weapons on board the plane. Well, English Special Forces team spotted the downed B-52. They'd been expecting to find the airplane smashed to smithereens and possibly burned out, but that wasn't the case. It looked like it had been set down gently inside the jungle. Astonishingly, the B-52, together with its payload of unexploded bombs, was completely intact. And the crash site was completely at odds with the fact that the plane would have hit the earth at over 500 miles per hour. It should have disintegrated on impact. And there wasn't even a landing path. Looked like it had been just set straight down. And the plane was still locked up tight. They had to gain access to it. And inside, the four-man crew was all still strapped in their seats, but they'd all been hideously mutilated. Mutilations bore a chilling resemblance to those that had been previously observed in cattle. The eyes of the crew members had been removed. In some cases, genitals had been excised, as were sections of lips and fragments of the jaw. These organs had been surgically removed and cuts were smooth, ruling out the attack from wild animals. After moving dog tags and sensitive code books, the rescue team set explosive charges and blew up the plane and its bomb load intact. It's interesting that the remains of the mutilated crew were also burned. They weren't bagged up and repatriated for further study or even for given a decent burial. And the episode after that was hushed up. Officially, it never happened. Only a few weeks after making this discovery and tying up any loose ends, English's team was mysteriously ambushed in the jungle and everybody was killed except Bill English himself. Well, no doubt spooked by the events, English left the Army. In 1976, he was given a report on what had actually transpired in the Laos jungle, entitled Gludge Blue Book Report Number 13. Top secret report contained details and graphic photographs of mutilated air crew and the downed but intact B-52. As soon as he saw the photographs, some of which he personally took, he knew the contents of the report were authentic. Now, he'd been given that report by mistake. He had been assigned to a post in Britain, but as soon as he saw it and his superiors realized he had seen it, he was dismissed from his post. Well, for the next 8 years or so, he maintained a low profile, built a new life for himself in Virginia. Then there were 10 or more attempts made to kill him. Whether it was true or not, he claimed his house had once been sprayed with bullets. Somebody, some agency wanted to silence him because of what he knew. Well, let's talk about another case of human mutilation in Brazil, referred to as the Guaraparanga Dam incident. It was reported in 1992. The body of the unfortunate victim, a man, was found on a small isolated island in the reservoir near Sao Paulo. Forensic officers photographed the body from just about every angle. All the photographs had one thing in common. They were horrific. This is the most barbaric human mutilation to date. According to the report signed by Drs. Pereira de Oliveira and Claude Roberto Luber, the autopsy report makes for very grim reading. One ear had been sliced off. In addition, the inner ear had been removed. Both the eyes and the tongue had been excised. The entire contents and organs within the abdomen had been taken. The autopsy report states that an extensive hematoma extends for the entire length of the very bruised and stretched penis. Also, the prostate gland had been removed through the penis. Genitals had been removed. The vascular system had been drained of blood. Mutilated bodies found resting on damp soil which showed no signs of struggle. In fact, all signs of any other person were conspicuously absent from the island. Pathologists determined that the actual cause of death was by heart attack due to extreme pain. In other words, although paralyzed, the man was conscious while all this was being done to him. It was also concluded the organs were removed using a combination of small incision and some types of suction device. You might conclude this man had been captured and tortured by some gangland characters, but why would anybody want to extract a man's inner ear or his prostate gland? And once we eliminate human criminal activity, you're left with just one possible cause. He was abducted and mutilated by aliens. His corpse was dumped on the island from the air. Evidently, the aliens who perform this and other mutilations of humans is nothing different from cattle or any other type of animal. They regard us as we would regard chickens, small brains and expendable. Are UFOs responsible for mutilations? A lot of folks think that's the case. And Jerome Clark is certainly the opinion that UFOs are connected with animal mutilations. Certain anomalies are detectable at a typical mutilation scene. One thing, the soil at each location allegedly contains a higher than normal concentration of iron oxide as well as magnetite. And the pattern of organ removal remains pretty much constant. Tongue and genitals are always removed. You have to ask the opposite question: if these supposedly extraterrestrial beings have the technology to travel halfway across the universe, why are they doing these mutilations? If, and it's a big if, the aliens are using these tissues to track, manipulate DNA, they may be doing this for two reasons. They want to adapt themselves to our planet, and secondly, identify ways to remove the indigenous human race. Of course, both reasons are not mutually exclusive. There was a case where a UFO crashed as a result of a meteorite striking and smashing a porthole. Aliens were forced to land. Apparently, all the aliens were burned from the inside as if they weren't accustomed to our oxygen-rich atmosphere. Life forms on planet Earth have been 3 billion years to evolve biochemical mechanisms that neutralize the toxic actions of oxygen within cells. This may not be the case for aliens. It's also said the stereotypical image of an alien gray is a large-head, slight creature with very large black eyes. Some say these big black eyes are the equivalent to sunglasses. So extraction of eyes from cattle and human may give material to study how mammalian eyes function, but why take the genitals? That's one of the big questions that needs to be answered. And on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow. And once again, you'll be listening to Ken Hudnall, the Ken Hudnall Show. Until then, have a truly great evening.